You know what? I forgot to start the captioner. Hi, how you doing today? So, today we have a lot on our agenda. Um, so I am going to do from the last live stream, I said I was going to do two follow-ups. The first one was going to be a follow-up to the Super Bowl ad that we watched in regards to them faking a movie trailer for tourism in Australia. I can't speak. I said faking, and I don't even think I said the word Australia right, but life is hard. I said the word. God, fucking stupid ass captioner. The bird is a bird. Okay, so, I said bird is a word. But anyway, fucking. But we have a lot on our agenda today, in case you haven't noticed from the video description. We're going to be talking about, this, like, I don't know what to call this, like a blog? I didn't really think about that. Like an article, blog thing, email chain, and a blog that went viral. Like probably I don't know what was this, 10 years ago. Oh damn, this is 14 years ago. Shit, that was a long time ago. This was so I remember this in high school. So I thought like I would go through it and talk about what I still thought was funny, but then also talk about like um just questioning the context of everything. The context, CONT. Yeah, there we go. Questioning, not quiet. Fuck the stupid ass um, captioner. Oh, fuck it. I hate it. Alright. And so from after that, and that's just like a little icebreaker because we've been talking about like a lot of boring shit and or a lot of serious shit. So I just thought that would be something that would be a little fun for me to do. Um, and like, and you probably saw it before, but if you didn't, then here you go. So keeping it alive, maybe, or maybe it should die. I don't know, but we'll see. Fucking and then after that, we're gonna be going really into this whole concept of the Super Bowl ad that we watched, that we talked about. We didn't watch the ad yet. We talked about in the last video I did. It's linked in the description. And in that video, I was comparing Moz, M-O-Z, versus Ahrefs, Ahrefs. And Moz, M-O-Z, um, I believe it's them, but I'm pretty sure it's them. They put out a fucking video about the Crocodile Dundee ad that I did a reaction to. So this is a follow up to that. And so the Crocodile Dundee ad was a fake movie trailer that they did to encourage tourism to Australia. And so you can go watch that previous video if you want my reaction to them explaining that marketing campaign. And so next, what we're going to do from that marketing campaign reaction is we're going to look into the whole concept of placing ads on the Super Bowl. I mean, well, yeah, if that makes sense. Am I using the right words? I said in the, not under. But I meant like for the television ads. And we're going to discuss fucking return on ad spend regarding that, as well as what the ad costs are, and typical expectations. And then after that, we're going to discuss everything I can pull up regarding possible results from 2018 uh, regarding Australia tourism's return on investment from their Super Bowl campaign, from what I can find online. And then after that, what we're gonna be doing is fucking also, I don't know if I'm saying this in order actually, but another thing we're gonna be doing is also watching and reacting to the actual ad itself because we have not watched that yet. I want to see it. Another thing I'm going to be doing is looking into tourism and income disparity in Australia, as well as how that impacts Native people and what is the outcome of these types of ad campaigns under settler colonialism. And so I think that's a good summary of every fucking thing we're gonna look at today. If I missed something, my bad. And so fucking yeah. So I guess let's do this bitch. So let's get started. Hi, my name is Lexi, also known as and doing business as Deaf Child. In 2022, my company was listed as number 14 best Louisiana events companies and startups. I have been doing business as Deaf Child since 2013. I have my Bachelor of Science in Music Industry Studies and Business Administration, and deafness runs in my family genetically. Speech is not fully accessible to me. And I've got about 50 certifications in marketing and sales that you can find at noladeafchild.com. Oh yeah, another thing that I said I was gonna do was a live stream where we look at the issues with my website SEO and what I'm gonna do to fix it. I don't know if that's gonna be in consecutive order like the next live stream I do, but however, whenever the fuck I sit down to do that, I will be live streaming it here. So that will be happening. That's coming out. I just don't know if it's gonna be like when in the order it's coming out because I might dick around and do another live stream, between now and then, just because like I've been working a lot. So I try to balance, like that's gonna be me live streaming me working. So I try to balance doing things to decompress from, like, cause like there's only so much mental workload I can take. So yeah, all right. I'm gonna share my screen now. So the first thing I wanted to look at was fucking the Missing Missy blog, email chain, article thing. I don't really know what the fuck to label it. It's supposed to be like a theoretical joke. And so I wanted to read through it all, talk about what I think is funny about it, and then talk about like under different contexts what I think could be certain issues, as well as what I think from a marketing perspective. From like, so when I first read this, I was in high school, and so I just thought it was funny because I just thought the idea of the graphic design responses were funny to the prompts, kind of, because you'll see why, I think. And at that point, when you're in high school, I feel like, particularly when you either haven't processed your trauma or you have a less understanding of trauma, you haven't really, you can be less like understanding of what someone is going through when they're upset. And so I remember at that time I thought it was funny. And there are still things that I think are funny about it, but looking back at it, and I even told my mom a couple of days ago that I thought that it was still kind of funny, but even since then, rereading it again, I've kind of changed my mind. But it's not that I don't think it's funny, it's just that I don't know if under certain conditions I would think this is funny still. You know what I'm saying? And so, but I also do not have the full context of this email. Like, it could all be fake. Not a single thing could be real about it. The whole storyline could be fake. And in that case, there would be no reason to, I guess, technically be mad if there's like nothing actually happened to anybody. Um, I don't know. And so then that's got me thinking of the whole concept of like animation, right? Like in animation, people will excuse things as being funny that if you were to see in real life would be perceived as traumatic or violent or something like that. Uh, but then if you animate it, people will excuse it because then it's not real, it's fake, right? And so sometimes I feel like on a certain level, perhaps that's beneficial. Perhaps like with, playing video games, for example. I think it can be beneficial on like a competition aggression level to have an outlet for that type of, you know, release from that emotion or something. I don't know if I'm using the right words here, but then like on another level, like conceptually, like I wonder what is entertaining or what is funny to humans. Like, why are we like this where we think it's entertaining or human? We are human. Hmm. Fucking, or we think it's entertaining or funny as humans is what I meant to say. to laugh about the idea of things being dead or um I don't know. Like I've gotten to a point aggressive with my anger management issues and stuff like that, and uh, with needing to work on myself, where I've said things I shouldn't be saying. You know, in terms of wishing some harm upon people and perhaps I don't know if I can say these words on YouTube. It's not that I don't want to talk about what the fuck I think I'm doing wrong, but I don't know what the fuck I can and can't say on YouTube. So fucking basically telling people, as my friends would say, to go play in traffic. But fucking, so we've all been there, right? So, but usually whenever I get that way, like I feel like some fucked up shit has happened to occur to trigger that reaction to where like they cause harm upon me for that to be my response. And so in situations like that, I can kind of understand how someone will get there because anybody will break under certain conditions. Um, but when it comes to like people just doing that and then laughing and thinking it's so hilarious, I'm not there yet. I have not processed why is that funny. Is it something that I don't understand about humans? Like I gotta stick up my ass, or is it something that's like a social issue where people need to? This is like a social issue of society. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But if anyone has a reason to them that it's not that they don't think it's a defense mechanism for causing harm, but like rather a coping mechanism. Because that you know what? No. I don't need someone to tell me shit because that's here I'm processing it. If it's funny to you, if it's a coping mechanism for how you've dealt with some bullshit in your own life, like you lost a cat, your cat died, and all you can do is fucking laugh about it because um, this is like intrusive thoughts you've had or something like that, you know, that I kind of get. But if it's like a defense mechanism because you want to off a cat, then I'm kind of scared of you. You know what I'm saying? I'm just gonna be real with that. Okay, okay. But I don't know how I spent so long talking about this concept and we haven't even fucking read the thing. So I am gonna actually read this entire article because I just want to. But everything else that I've pulled up, I'm gonna try not to read the whole fucking thing, but watch me read the whole fucking thing because I'm me. But yeah, whatever. I'm gonna try not to do that. Like I'm gonna try to like just skim and scan, get some points. So at the very beginning, it's got a picture of a lady and in a quote next to her, it says, "I'm extremely emotional over this and was up all night in tears." And then under that, and I think that's a quote from the lady. And then I'm pretty sure that underneath is a blurb from the author, um, whose name was David. So it says, "I'm not a big fan of cats. I don't hate them, but if I visit your house, I don't want to pat your cat, sit on the couch where it has been, or have you make me a sandwich after patting it. I didn't want that sandwich anyway. The Maxwell House instant coffee was bad enough, and when you smelled the milk to see if it was still okay, despite being a week past its use by date, I saw your nose touch the carton. I actually rescued a cat once. I was walking across a bridge over a river that was in flood when I heard mewing and saw a frantic cat being pulled along by the raging torrent. I picked up a fairly hefty fallen branch and threw it over the rail to where the cat was. I didn't see the cat after that, but I'm pretty sure it would have climbed on and ridden the branch over the next set of rapids and waterfall to safety." So obviously that's a fucking joke, right? That's gotta be that's sarcasm. That's the joke. But so that's what leads me to believe that perhaps the whole thing on premise could be either entirely a joke and none of it is real, or if Shannon is real, he doesn't fucking like this bitch, so fuck her, and he's gonna sarcastically talk shit about her. I can't tell. I don't know this dude. I'm not saying this is what's happening. I'm talking shit about me not knowing shit about theories behind this shit. You know? So then Shannon emailed and that is like the what is the precursor to showing an email chain theoretically. And then it's got from Shannon. Then it's got the date to David with the subject poster. And it says, "Hi, I opened the screen door yesterday and my cat got out and has been missing since then. So I was wondering if you are not busy, you could make a poster for me. It has to be A4 and I'll photocopy it and put it around my suburb this afternoon. This is the only photo of her I have. She answers to the name Missy and she is black and white, about 8 months old, missing on Harper Street, and my phone number. Thanks, Shan." Okay. So for me, it depends entirely on the context of this shit, right? Like, is David getting paid? You know what I'm saying? Is David a freelancer, or did David and Shannon work together? You know? Um, like if some random person emailed me that, I would be like, "I'm so sorry you lost your cat," but if I don't know you, I I get so much requests for free labor that I literally don't have the energy to do that. You know, um, there are missing people, and I care about animals, I do, but it's just that I know of more missing people who actually need me to put that labor into that instead, and things like that. You know what I'm saying? To where it's like I would have to know you to do something for your cat for free or your dog for free, and it's not because I don't care about strangers, cats and dogs, but I don't have the mental energy myself and the resources myself to do that for strangers, you know? But I will share, if you're a stranger, the graphic you already made. I can share that for you. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of this, for me to have an opinion on the social issue, I would need context of it. And I have no context. So therefore, I want to take it all as a joke and have a good time with it. It's just that when I think of the reality of certain things, you know what I'm saying? Um, it's hard for me to then be like, "Oh, this is funny," because it's like, well, what if this was real? What if this is a real person's cat missing? You know what I mean? Like, like just because I couldn't do your graphic, how would I respond to you? And when people push me on doing free labor for them, I can be a fucking bitch. I know I can be, but fucking, if you're just asking me, I'll either tell you if I can or can't do it and what my pricing is. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, don't ask me to do free shit. I can't. Not that I don't want to, but my free services are on my site. I can't do more than that. Not that I don't want to, I just don't have the resources to. That's why I put the resources, you know. Okay. So, David responded to Shannon saying, "Dear Shannon, that is shocking news. Luckily, I was sitting down when I read your email and not halfway up a ladder or tree. How are you holding up? I'm surprised you managed to attend work at all with you thinking about Missy out there, cold, frightened, and alone, possibly lying on the side of the road, her back leg squashed by a vehicle, calling out, 'Shannon, where are you?' Although I have two clients expecting completed work this afternoon, I will, of course, drop everything and do whatever it takes to facilitate the speedy return of Missy. Regards, David." So everything I was just saying, really, realistically, I guess is like sums up a reason for a sarcastic response like this to somebody. But it's like if you were to work together at like an agency or wherever it may be, like some type of business, and this was your coworker and their cat went missing, like fuck it, you're getting paid by the hour. Fuck it, make them the goddamn poster. It's important. Shit, fucking, I would do it. Fucking anyway. Shit, fuck. Um, but you know, that's my thought when I read this. But then when I'm trying to take it as a joke because this guy is just dicking around, or he just really doesn't like this bitch, so he's like, "Fuck you and your cat. I hope your cat finds someone else." Um, and teasing her about it. It's like, damn, you gotta really fucking hate somebody to talk to them that way. So it's like, what did Shannon really do to you? You know what I mean? Theoretically, like, who, like, so say this is all made up, and this isn't about this Shannon. I feel like this is about somebody. This type of, or this, or it's either about somebody or it was stolen from somewhere. You know what I mean? This idea. Like, there's just like, because, like, this just feels like a lot of aggression to have somebody. Like, yeah, it's funny, but part of what makes it so funny is the hatred. And part of what makes it so funny is the how real the pettiness feels. So if this is totally fake, it's very good writing, to be honest. Um, and if this is real, it's still I mean it's still technically good writing, but it's still more it would be more of like, bro, you're just really you're either a really good guy who just really hates this fucking bitch, if she's a bitch, maybe she was to you, or you might be an asshole. Is what I think when I read this shit, if it's real. But if it's all a joke and all made up, it's pretty hilarious and pretty funny to me. But I still think you might have some anger about someone that you're putting into this. Like, it's just, I don't know. That's just me reading this right now. But yeah, fucking, like, I just, every time when I read this shit, I'm like, who upset you? Okay. And then Shannon said, yeah, okay, thanks. I know you don't like cats, but I'm really worried about mine. I have to leave at 1 today. And David said, dear Shannon, I never said I dislike cats. Once, having been invited to a party, I went clothes shopping and bought a pair of expensive boots. They were 2 sizes too small, but I wanted them so badly I figured I could just wear them without socks and cut my toenails really short. Unfortunately, I lost all feeling in my feet and stumbled into a guy named Steven, spilling Malibu and Coke onto his Choose Life t-shirt, and he punched me. An hour or so after the incident, Stephen sat down in a chair already occupied by a cat. The surprised cat clawed and snarled, causing Stephen to leap out of the chair, slip on a rug, and strike his forehead into the corner of a floor speaker, resulting in a 2-inch open gash. In its shock, the cat also defecated, leaving Stephen with a wet brown stain down the back of his beige cargo pants. I like that cat. Attached poster as requested. Regards, David. The poster is like a movie trailer poster, and it's got like Missing Missy, a Shannon production. Um, and just like a movie DVD would have like how long a movie is and the production crew and all of that. That's how the information about the cat is on there. And then the cat is like really, really tiny in the bottom right corner. And it is cropped out of the original picture like a vector image now. Fucking, and I just think that's really funny. So when you give this context, if it were real and you actually didn't have time to deal with this because you were busy with clients, you wouldn't be having time to fuck around like this with the graphic design. And there's so much you could have quickly done for her real fast that she would have needed used. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not that fucking hard. Come on, man. So yeah, like so when he put that, he wasn't too busy for her. That's theoretically or in joke. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it goes back to the reason it's supposed to be funny is the hatred of this particular person, I guess, or the way this particular person is mistreated. So I think that's interesting. Um, I think this is a funny fucking poster. I don't like the way he treats the person is treated as a even if it's as a joke because I think that perpetuates normalizing bullying to laugh about it. You know what I'm saying? But I think that's a funny fucking poster. Like if it were the posters without like some of the story and the commentary um are funny stories but framed as responses to someone whose cat is actually missing is kind of like heartless. And maybe that's what's supposed to be funny about it. People think it's funny to laugh about the concept of not caring about others. But to me, that's either a coping mechanism or a defense mechanism. And if it's, I don't happen to know you well enough to know it's a coping mechanism for a specific trauma you went through, it comes off as a defense mechanism, and it comes off, like you just don't give a fuck about others, in my opinion. And it's like, not everybody that is laughing about this shit actually has a coping mechanism related to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like a lot of people, they're laughing because of how they treat others, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it all again. Okay, so Shannon's response was, yeah, that's not what I was looking for at all. It looks like a movie, and how come the photo of Missy is so small? And David said, dear Shannon, it's a design thing. The cat is lost in the negative space. Regards, David. I think that's funny because it's not as, it doesn't put her down in any way. Um, and whenever I made my comment about not liking the way he talked to her and stuff, honestly, this part right here isn't even that bad. It was more of the condescending nature of the first email. But when you combine that with the fact that he doesn't take it seriously, as if he's dismissing her, you know what I'm saying? Fucking, I'm scrolling down too fast. Yeah, that shit fucking, I don't know. Yeah, you know what? I stand by that. I lied. I kind of don't like the way he's talking to her. Alright, but then fuck her too, though, because she's being a bitch. Because then she's saying, that's just stupid. Can you do it properly, please? Like, okay, like, yeah, he's being a dick, but that actually wasn't stupid. That was funny, and that looked cool, and you know what I'm saying? So, so to fuck her too. Um, and then she said, I'm extremely emotional over this and was all night in tears. You seem to think it's funny. Can you make the photo bigger, please, and fix the text and do it in color, please? But I mean, bitch, do you really not know how to use a single type of photo editor? Not know Paint, not know nothing? Like, you could have made it, you could have put this shit in Microsoft Word or Google Docs and come out with all you needed, though. Like, did you need to ask him to do it? Theoretically, on premise. So, that's another reason I don't feel like it's like a real thing. So then it's just about the construct of making someone feel bad. I don't know, that we're supposed to laugh at. Um, yeah, I guess I'm theoretically narrow vibing. So then David said, "There's why can't I enjoy jokes anymore? Like, is this a me thing or is this a social thing? I don't know, or a society thing." So then Shannon said, "Oh no, sorry." Then David said, "Dear Shannon, having worked with designers for a few years now, I would have assumed you understood. Despite our vague suggestion otherwise, we do not welcome constructive criticism." That's actually kind of funny because it's true. I don't come downstairs and tell you how to send text messages, log into Facebook, and look out the window. I'm willing, however, to overlook this faux pas, as you are no doubt preoccupied with thoughts of Missy attempting to make her way home across a busy intersection, or being trapped in a drain as it slowly fills with water. I spent 3 days down a well once, but that was just for fun. I have amended and attached the poster as per your instructions. Regards, David. And it's really funny because it's still a different version of a movie poster, but this time the cat is way bigger. And it has the quote, extremely emotional. I was in tears. And it's in purple, and it says Shannon Walkley, the secretary. And it says Missing Missy, an epic Shannon production. Just fucked up. Okay, I shouldn't be laughing at that. But fucking, I think the posters are funny. The wording on the back and forth, though, even whether or not the joke is theoretical, or if the joke is, or if it's not a joke, if it's a real email chain, I question how it is a reflection of the way humans interact with each other, to be real. But yeah, bigger please, done. Fix the text and do it in color. What was wrong with the text though? The text is kind of the same. And he just added extremely emotional and tears. Okay, so then she said, this is worse than the other one. Can you make it so it shows the whole photo of Missy and delete the stupid text that says Missing Missy off of it? I just want it to stay lost. So now the response is a lost from the TV show, an edited poster from the lost TV show with Missing Missy, and all the text is gone. It just says lost, and it's got Missing Missy up top. Fucking, yeah, it's funny as shit to me. That is funny. Okay, and then she says, yeah, can you do the poster or not? I just want a photo and the word lost and the telephone number and when where she was lost and her name. Not like a movie poster or anything stupid. I have to leave early today. If it was your cat, I would help you. Thanks. Um, and then he said, dear Shannon, I don't have a cat. I once agreed to look after a friend's cat for a week, but after he dropped it off at my apartment and explained the concept of kitty litter, I kept the cat in a cardboard box in the shed and forgot about it. If I wanted to feed something and clean feces, I wouldn't have put my mother in that home after her stroke. Damn. A week later, when my friend came to collect his cat, I pretended I was at home and mailed the box to him. Apparently, I failed to put enough stamps on the package, and he had to collect it from the post office and pay $18. I wonder if it's mommy issues regarding all of this. Maybe his mom liked cats. And then he said he still goes on about that sometimes. People need to learn to let go. Please find attached the amended version of your poster as per your detailed instructions. So, she said, I just want a photo, she said a photo, and the word lost, and the telephone number, and when and where and the name. The funny thing about this is it's not the picture of the cat that is missing. He used a different random orange cat instead of her cat that was missing and made the lost poster. I do think that's kind of funny. Conceptually, like I go back and forth, like I was saying with the joke, right? On why I think it's funny, if I think it's funny, and then why I don't like it. Because sometimes I don't like it because of him, but then sometimes I don't like it because of her, because it speaks to how um, fucking bitches do treat people in marketing or graphic design and demand labor and time from us, even for their personal stuff. Um, and you know, they kind of can devalue our labor in many ways. All right, so fucking after that, Shannon said, that's not my cat. Where'd you get that picture from? That cat is orange. You have a photo of my cat. And David said, Shannon, I know, but that one is cute. As Missy has likely met any one of several violent ends, it's possible you might get a better cat out of this. If anybody calls and says, I haven't seen your orange cat, but I did find a black and white one with its hind legs run over by a car, do you want it? You can politely decline and save yourself a costly veterinarian bill. You know, I wonder if there's some ableism up in here. And that's some other part of the devaluing of life issue of this theoretical joke here that, you know, we should consider. But anyway, and then he says, I knew someone who had a basset hound that had its hind legs removed after an accident, and it had to walk around one of those little buggies with wheels. If it had been my dog, I would have asked for all its legs to be removed and replaced with wheels. The fuck? Now he's just talking shit. I could charge neighborhood kids for rides and enter it in races. If I did the same with a horse, I could drive it to work. I'd call it Steven. Because I just feel like this is a fucking joke. And then she said, please just use the photo I gave you. And he did, but he added reward offer $2,000. Um, and fucking, I don't know, I just think that's kind of funny. Like, if you don't like someone and they're treating you like shit for asking you for something, I do kind of think theoretically on premise this is the funny response. Regardless of my thoughts on the dialogue itself. And then fucking, after that, Shannon said, I didn't say there was a reward. I don't have $2,000. Why did you even put that there? Apart from that, it's perfect. Can you please remove the reward bit? Thanks. And then so he did, but he put no reward. And she said, can you please take the reward bit off altogether? I have to leave in 10 minutes and I still have to make photocopies of it. And so he did. He added a little red tiny hat. And she was like, fine, that will have to do. Okie dokie. So yeah. Um, And here's another thing that I think this is a fucking joke. So at the end, there's a disclaimer. In the disclaimer, it says, this site may contain personal misinformation and or photos of these. Colors may, in time, fade. Activities and vehicle modifications described on this site may be potentially dangerous. Refrigerate after opening. All content on this site is the intellectual property of 27B/6. Reproducing the contents of this site without permissions means I get to have your car for 2 weeks. I don't have a car, so you can have it, my dude. And always check the water depth before diving. Be nice. Don't play with eels. I'm pretty sure my shit falls under fair use. And if it doesn't, it should. So suck my fucking dick, bitch. I'm just kidding. But um, honestly, I'm not claiming this shit. It's theirs and shit. I'm just trying to comment and react on some shit that I thought was funny about 14 years ago. All right, let's move on. Fucking so from this blog from Axios, titled "Brands Think 30 Seconds During the Super Bowl is Worth $7 million." We can see how much money or so this was spent on this would be spent like on marketing campaigns for Super Bowl. And we're going to factor all of this into the return on investment when you consider that as well. So this is from the stat shows from 2022, the average Super Bowl advertiser saw $4.60 for every dollar spent. And that aligns theoretically if the 30 seconds was spent about 7 million. I think that aligns with the reported numbers that we're going to find later from this advertising. And brands that use digital creative and earned media to complement the ads see a high return. So if it's about converting viewers into customers, and you can't just do an ad or anything like that, you have to, they're talking about generating media interest in order to see a return on investment. But monetary returns aren't a given, especially for brands that play it too safe. I love how they're saying mediocrity is the biggest sign of failure, when half the time it's not even in regards to mediocrity, it's in regards to issues regarding income disparity. I mean, sometimes I guess if you want to count about how people will not be spending their money in a good way, I guess you can call that mediocrity, but I don't know. I do find they're talking about it's a mistake to over rely on celebrity. I do find that is an issue. And I criticize that with the Santina advertising strategy for brands, how that could be a difficult thing for others to replicate, because her social media strategy for others is using her celebrityness to promote them, but does that generate them long-term buyers? Because to me, that's not setting up long-term systems for sustainability. That's just a short-term marketing that you're paying for while she's there, but when she's gone, the lead generation she brings with her is gone. Versus like if you set up, which I mean, I do think she's a great marketer and she's got like her own thing going for what it is. It's just a different thing versus when you do like with a full funnel growth agency, what you're going to get the value out of that is the systems you need for if you're done working with that agency, you're still going to be able to see a return on your investment if you know how to run ads or follow the plan, if that makes sense. Or if you have a good sales funnel set up, it's not going to matter which agency you work with, because you'll still be generating those leads. Versus when you rely on a celebrityness to bring in the leads, when they dip, your leads generation, your lead magnet is gone too. So yeah. From Tegna, and you know what? I'm gonna try to remember to link that Santina video in the description after this. From Techno, they published about how the greatest Super Bowl ads of all time, can be a journey or a journey through iconic moments. And they priced it at 5.5 million for 30 seconds of airtime. Um, and this is from 2024. Um, And then they're saying that research from the University of Minnesota shows that while there may not be an immediate spike in sales, there is an immediate spike in online searches thanks to Super Bowl advertising. Super Bowl advertisers see a 22% bump in total word of mouth conversations. Um, and that's for the week following and 16% the month following. And some of this can be tracked um, in terms of like digital conversation is still considered word of mouth marketing. Um, so somewhat to the extent that there is digital conversation that can be somewhat tracked. And then they said that Kantar also found Super Bowl ads delivered an average return on investment of 4.6 per dollar spent, with ads seeing a return on investment of 100 plus per dollar spent. Oh, okay. The 4.6 per dollar spent is the average, but it could go up to 100 or more. Processing that. Fucking, yeah. And so from here, we're not going to go into these creatives, but from the rest of this article, it goes into creatives from Super Bowl commercials. But we're not going to go into that because that's not what the focus of this live stream is, and that would just make this even longer. So then from the New York Times, we have another article called 7 million for 30 seconds. To advertisers, the Super Bowl is worth it. And it says, in a time of fragmentation, advertising during the game's broadcast is still a reliable way to boost company revenue and familiarize viewers with a brand. And this is by Santul Narkar. I don't know how to say his name. I'm sorry if that was wrong. So yeah, they're talking about 30 seconds for 7 million is the number they give us here. I'm using a lot of ums today. Um, so it says in 2021, television networks committed 110 billion for the rights to broadcast the league for a decade. And the NFL has continued to set record viewership numbers. More than 115 million people watched last year's championship game. And I think that's referring to 2023's game. But, yeah. The Super Bowl, it stands as a mass marketing opportunity. A decade ago, the average cost of a 30-second spot is 4 million, and a decade before that, it was 2.4 million. Analysts say this is a result of supply and demand. With a fixed amount of time in advertising spots for each Super Bowl broadcast, the competition is fierce. And they're also saying that you're not just paying for that 30-second spot, it's a 4 to 6 week buzz that you're creating. And that takes us back to that marketing campaign they're saying it was 6 months of planning that they did on that. Kantar has a article called In-Game Ad Revenue for Super Bowl. Is that 56? Increased by more than 143 million. Shit, I am not good at Roman numerals. I think that's 56. Fucking, but yeah, and you're talking about how NBC generated 578 million for in-game revenue. And this was for 2023. Or is it 2022? For 2022. This is written in 2023 about 2022. Um, that's harder to say than you would think it would be. So yeah, in 2022, NBC generated 578.36 million. So they grew 143.8 million, with 32 million generated just during the halftime show. So total revenue accounting for pre, post, and in-game advertising increased by more than 100 million year over year. Oh, you know what? I'm assuming that the halftime ads are more expensive than the others too, huh? From 534 million in 2021 to 636 million in 2022. Um, yeah, it's a lot. In 2021, it brought in the most pre-game ad revenue since 2017. So yeah. In 2022, the average price per 30-second commercial was 6.5. So let's take it back to 2018 though, because that is the context of which this whole live stream is going to be about. They paid 4.8 was the average price for a 30-second commercial. And this is million, 4.8 million. So the contour says that they can consistently deliver strong return on investments. You gotta have strong creative. And all of that. So that's interesting because we'll see on some other sources who say that's not the case. So from the Media Nut, they say, is advertising this Super Bowl worth it? And now I've got Missy Elliott in my head. Is it worth it? Let me work it. And it says, since the last Super Bowl, the world is not put too fine a point on it different. Because they're talking about the pandemic. This guy is talking about the reckoning in society of the injustices towards black and brown people. Of course, it's a white dude that looks like this talking like that, though. Are you... Okay, Josh Sternberg. I don't know if I like this article. Because... What the... Deleterious? Causing harm or damage? I don't like how this is worded. I don't know. Something is... I'm not processing this right now. I can't do that right now. It's just... I'm gonna move along. But what the fuck is that? Am I like, what? What is this? What are you? What is this? I don't know if I like this wording. Okay. But yeah, you're not even fucking telling me anything new anyway. Um, so one of their agencies found that brands who booked an ad for 2021 with Super Bowl had a combined TV social lift of 74% versus 67% who did not. So, overall, they saw a TV social conversion rate of 11% increase. Um, and that could be an average thing. I wonder what metrics, where they're getting those metrics from, because there's different ways you could be doing that. But I mean, I guess something regarding some type of Nielsen, Niel, I think it's SEN, reporting. They're recommending a year-long campaign for the Super Bowl, to plan with Super Bowl in here. Apparently, according to here, they're saying that Kantar said that the Super Bowl generated 3.6 billion in ad revenue within the last decade. So yeah, the risk with running Super Bowl ads, what they're discussing now is whether or not the ad performs, because the investment is so big that if you don't put a successful enough ad behind it, you're going to lose your internal investment. But you can understand that by testing the content strategy with ads before. And some are still saying that even with the immediate lift you get in those conversions, that are saying that it's not worth the 5 million for a sport that is decreasing in ratings, because they're getting a lot of bad ratings through the NFL, and viewership is declining over the last decade. So it's like, why is price increasing if viewership is decreasing? I was reading, I don't see anything else left related to this topic, so I'm going to scroll out. Okay, then from Setup US, we have a blog called Measuring Super Bowl Ad Return on Investment. It is complicated. Um, so yeah, fucking. You know what's interesting though is most people hate ads, but according to them, they got this from Burson Marsteller. Apparently, they say 53% of Americans would be disappointed if the Super Bowl went commercial free, and that's interesting because that speaks to how, even though we're talking shit on the Super Bowl and these ads, like, the Super Bowl is known for having some of the best ads in terms of viewer ratings, in terms of what people like to see out of advertising. And I think part of that has been the exclusivity, and how hard it is to get in has kind of made it so that only the best of the best perform there, to where you're on your A game if you're in the Super Bowl theoretically, because if not, you're going to be wasting millions of dollars. Um, to the point where there are ads that people actually enjoy watching, to where half of people would actually not like, would be sad if they weren't there. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's actually pretty cool, because theoretically, generally speaking, most people don't like ads. So let's see. This one is putting the average brand left about 13%. And they're talking about ways you can use ads to, promote yourself and rebrand and shit like that and drive traffic. But yeah. So let's see, why is it complicated if it tells us that? So it says, instead of shooting for purchase intent, the most sought after metric for measuring return on investment in the Super Bowl is called brand lift, or the likelihood of someone recognizing a brand after seeing an advertisement. The average brand, so we already discussed that. All right, so brand recognition is important, because the difference between brand recall and brand recognition. If someone can, and how it relates to brand loyalty. If someone can recall you off the top of your head, that means they do not need a prompt to think of you, and you're either first choice or last. If someone recognizes you, then you're second choice. The more that you are exposed to something in both amount of times and length of time, the more likely you are to form associations with it and have memories of it. And the more likely you are to recognize or recall it, and then therefore the more likely you are to potentially purchase the brand. So that's why people care about brand lift, because that is the brand recognition. So yeah, fucking from Vivint, we have one called in-game ad revenue for Super Bowl. I think this is 55, neared 435 million. Putting that into perspective, how much is being spent on ads here. My door is doing some shit. So fucking watching commercials during the game apparently in 2021 surpassed the halftime show. That's interesting. So it's giving us very similar numbers that we've seen before, just more backing up on those data metrics. In 2018, the average price per 30-second commercial was 4,800 is what they're saying right here. I wonder if that's 4,800,000 or if that's 4,800. Because right here it's talking about 6.5 million. 5.5 million. But then the way it's written, I'm not entirely sure. So, yeah. Fucking, I think that they're charging millions of dollars for this. Right? No, they're charging millions. Yeah. Alright. So that one wasn't clear to me. So then Single Grain, they have a little blog thing called "Is Super Bowl Advertising Worth It for Big Events?" Um, and they say that 41% of consumers notice brands more and are more likely to purchase from them after watching Super Bowl ads. Do 41% of consumers even watch the Super Bowl? So is this 41% of people who watch the Super Bowl? You know what I'm saying? Like, because I don't even think 41% of the world watches the Super Bowl. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Um, and then it's going into examples of how brands handle it. And then it talks about return on investment challenges because the cost is astronomically high. Last year's Super Bowl, it was 30-second spot in 2023 cost about 7 million, and it was the same again in 2024. And it's showing in 2018 right here we're getting 5.2 million from this. And so that's another thing you're seeing. I think I'm seeing some slightly different numbers. They're close, but they're slightly different across these sources, if I'm not mistaken. Perhaps they're measuring different things that I didn't notice, but I feel like I'm getting some slightly different metrics here. So I just want to put that into context because we're going to be thinking about the return on investment and the success of the ad we're analyzing today from last night's live stream. Was that last night? I think that was last night. Okay. So here we have a little opinion piece, and it says, is the ad spend on the Super Bowl or Olympics worth it? It depends on who you ask. I'm not going to really pay attention to the Olympics this time. We're just going to focus on the Super Bowl right now. And it's reiterating the 7 million for 30-second ad spot for 2024. And they're saying that there was more consumer impact driven by women with a 21% increase in demand growth, but commercials have a minimal impact on men with just a 1% demand growth, according to a research company called Veiling. That's interesting. And they summarize from this conclusion that the advertising at the Super Bowl drives at least a short-term bump in consumer demand for the brand, but the question remains if it's worth the cost, especially with non-advertisers also enjoying a modest benefit. So they're saying that almost half of consumers would report that they're more likely to purchase from a brand that communicates with them in an ongoing or personalized way. And so, spending millions of dollars on a single ad might not be that because we're struggling and you got money for $1 million on ad, bitch, fuck you. Anyway. Um, yeah. And then from analytics partners, they have a little blog post called Super Bowl Commercials Are Not Worth It Unless, and then it discusses the key to unlocking the full value from a multi-million-dollar Super Bowl ad. So, um, they track that global advertising will top 1 trillion in 2024. That's a lot of fucking money. It's wild to me that we can spend that much money to be online, but we can't. We could end world hunger with that, couldn't we? What's the like? Advertising should be free, and this should all go to end world hunger, or you know what I mean? I don't know. So they're questioning how effective is the Super Bowl campaign at driving business performance, um, because the cost of the 30-second commercial spot averages 7 million, even though it can have an immediate demand impact in the weeks following. They say many of the largest and most well-known Super Bowl advertisers would need to double demand to offset the cost of the spot. A double demand in the weeks following a Super Bowl to justify reallocating ad spend might be against better performing media, a target that is not very realistic. That's because our budgets are fixed, and if we spend it on Super Bowl, then it redirects funds from there to there. And Super Bowl ads, on average, typically deliver a very short-term return on investment, with at least 20 to 50% lower than a comparable alternative investment, which can lead to longer-term results. And it says for a more established, high awareness consumer brand, the opportunity cost is even larger. And the Super Bowl is on average 75% lower than the other marketing activities. So, yeah. So, should brands do that then? If it's effectively executed and it's supported by a range of pre and post activities, it can drive a 4 to 5 times larger impact. So they're saying it's a very big risk, but if done well, it can work, apparently. But you gotta have that money to put up first. Um, but if you have that much money to spend, you should be able to produce a pretty high quality ad. Wait, come back up. Where are you going? Okay, so next we are going to watch, and we're just gonna watch the whole fucking ad that we've been discussing and reacting to. Um, and we're just gonna see what they're talking about. So this is supposed to be an ad that is supposed to encourage people to go to book and look for this Australian company, but it's like it's supposed to be look like a movie trailer, but it's not actually a movie trailer. So let's find out. Let's watch it.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
I gotta turn the captions on, but it wasn't working. Let me go again.
That's not a knife. That's a knife. That's me.
Brian Dundee?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Why do you keep saying really?
You right there, mate?
Nothing to see here, man. Just getting a clean shave with my machete.
See you next.
And so here's, well, no, we've already been discussing the use of celebrities, and that's kind of what they're doing with this ad campaign by getting some of the original people in from the original Crocodile Dundee.
Next week, Barry. You know, when your dad did it, he was much...
Okay, and when my dad told me about this, he was just like, yeah, I just came up and you did this, okay?
I just don't think he can see you from back here.
Not a lot of crocs out here, huh?
It's just 37,000 miles of pristine, beautiful beach, mate. Did you know that Australia makes some of the finest wines in the entire world?
No, I didn't know that.
Thank you very much.
Wait, hold up.
So are you noticing the call to actions for them for tourism, to go do things and buy shit?
This isn't a movie.
No.
It's a tourism ad for Australia.
Yes. But listen, you're the best Crocodile Dundee since Crocodile Dundee.
Really?
Yes, really. And we had the best trip ever, didn't we?
It was pretty sweet.
Hey, you know, there are some great flight deals to Australia right now.
Dude, I get it. It's not a movie, it's a commercial.
Have I really been fucking muted this entire fucking time? God damn it. Okay, hold on. Let me scroll up and reread what I said. So I was basically talking about how before I hadn't seen the fucking context of the ad itself. I'd only seen the bitch talk about the ad that planned it. And I didn't like the way she talked about it. What I didn't realize when I was talking about how I didn't like she was tricking people, I didn't know at that time when I was making those statements that the ad does disclose it is an ad. Um, And so I do think that that is more ethical than if it didn't. And I do think that's good. So that one of the biggest issues I had with the ad is not an issue because it discloses that it's an ad. So where I was talking about having a problem with the ad itself in my live stream yesterday, I need to follow up to say that I did not have the context of seeing the ad yet. I think I said that though when I was saying everything. Um, and I was talking on premise of how it was described by the person who planned the campaign. So I don't like the way that I like the ad, but I don't like the way that the person who planned the campaign talked about the ad, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's basically the shit I was saying when I was fucking muted and didn't realize I was fucking muted. Whoops. Fucking. I keep doing that. Okay. Alright, back to some sources. So, fucking, USA Today wrote an article about it called Crocodile Dundee Sequel is Really Super Bowl Ad for Australia Tourism. And they're talking about how it looked like a sequel for the movie, but it was a 60-second ad. So if we know a 30-second ad costs $4 or so million, I imagine $4 to $5 million. I imagine the minute ad is going to cost around 10 million. You know what I'm saying? That's pretty expensive. Um, the flick was actually a sort of fake news. So yeah, and it was a stunt to promote the campaign, quote unquote, there's nothing like Australia. Um, and the movie would have starred the actual son of the dude that was in it, I think. If I'm not mistaken. I think I might have gotten that wrong. Look, but you know, I know that some of the people that were shown in the cast were like, and all the people involved in the seal were from the original fucking people. So I think I'm wrong about who is involved, whether it be the producer or the actors, but I do happen to know some of the original um, people got involved. So yeah. Then, according to Business Insider, they titled their article about it, Danny McBride told us how he got involved in that fake Crocodile Dundee movie, which was which was actually a 27 million ad campaign for Australian tourism. So by 27 million ad campaign, I don't know if they meant that that was an ROI or that how much was spent on it, because the cost to run the ad itself was between $4 and $10 million. If you factor in creative, you factor in the labor, you factor in the actors and all of that, it actually does make sense if it would have cost 27 million to run the ad. If you factor all the total expenses in and the landing page development, like all of it. So Danny McBride said he had to be a part of it just to see people's reactions. I can't tell if that's more if he wanted to fuck with people or more if he wanted to see if people would miss him. Um. So yeah, apparently there was two of the trailers, and one got over 1 million views. The second got 2.5 million. Um. Okay, so there was different trailers for it, and the final trailer played during the Super Bowl. So yeah, that was probably an entire thing had to have been 27 million if they did this many ads for it with all of that level of production and in the ad spots. To me, that makes sense. But there's no way for me to confirm. But yeah, fucking. So they did uh two trailers, one about playing with the knife and the Australian sidekick, and then they did a cast intro video, and then they did a final trailer during the Super Bowl. And so yeah. Okay, according to a Tourism Australia press release, the campaign itself cost $27 million from Business Insider. So yeah. All right. So now let's look into Tourism Australia. So Tourism Australia, they are Australia's, corporate, their government corporate tourism website, um, in order to try and, get some bitches to go spend money there. And then I love how they have a land acknowledgement at the bottom here. Oh man. Let's read this land acknowledgement. Delightful. Delightful. And that's a sarcastic delightful. And then they talk about promoting Indigenous tourism experiences. I wonder if they actually do. Okay. I tried to search from them in 2018 just to see what comes up. To try and see what are their reported results from the ad they spent on the Super Bowl. What I got from their publishing was there's nothing like Australia. Crocodile Dundee inspires 36 million American tourism push. But from Business Insider, we already know that they said they spent 27 million on it. So if you spent 27 million, and 36 million was the American tourism, is that only 9 million in profit, in revenue from this campaign? You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Like, so to spend 27 million to only make 9 million, is that worth it? Is it worth it? I don't know. They didn't go in the hole. They still got an ROI. So, but yeah, that's a lot of resources and a lot of effort. Like, was that worth it? Um, and then when you look at the campaign results, um, they're talking about, I don't know where they get this 85 million equivalent advertising value from, because we already looked at their strategy and the plan that was published. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know where the fuck they're getting that number from. And if they're saying 80, or if they're saying they spent 85 million total, that's worse. Like, I thought it was 27. Um, so out of 367,000 leads, you got 9 million out of them. Okie dokie. Um, we're right here where it says 8 Cannes Lions coveted advertising awards. I hate when people act like that is a campaign result for you. Like, to me, yeah, if you want to use that shit for SEO, go for it. Whatever. If you got the money, it's good SEO. But so the Cannes Lions Award, when you go there, you register your interest. So you register your interest. When you want to register your interest, you fill out your form, and that's how you put, I'm interested in entering the awards. So you submit to be considered, right? But not only that, there's a fee. So they have a fee for the award dates. Um, so it's like you're paying to have a title. You know what I'm saying? Um, and that's my fucking thing. And there's refunds and cancellations you can do, and award key dates and all of that. But That's why I'm like, when people are like, oh, I won an ad for, oh, an award for my ad, I have a hard time taking them seriously, because it's just like, bitch, you paid for that shit, didn't you? Can't you? Did you? I don't know. I feel like you did. It's just like you're just paying to call yourself great. So it's like that's just more money spent on this promoting. It's like after marketing in a way. Like, is that factoring into your budget? Is that after marketing included in that 27 million spent? You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, and it's just a little campaign. So then they talk about the how their international visitor spending outpaces arrivals in 2018. This is also from Tourism Australia. Um, and they're saying that spending by international visitors to Australia in 2018 grew by 7% to 43.9 billion. So you spent 27 million. The spending grew 5%. Yeah, and you saw a 5% growth in arrivals at 9.2 million. And that aligns with the campaign growth metric numbers we saw with, bring back these pagers. What was it? Yeah. So they're saying, so you 36 million American tourism push with a 27 million spend. You know what I'm saying? So you spent 27 million on the campaign, 36 million tourism push, and now we're seeing where that extra 9 million came from right here, where that 5.5% growth for 2018. So I do see that right there. Um, from that campaign. So I can't deny it was a successful campaign. I just don't know if it's like worth it. Is it really worth it? Like, if we think about what happened, like with the outcome of tourism and all of that, even with your land acknowledgement, and I'm not native to Australia, so I can't speak on native Australian issues. So don't take my word with a grain of salt. I'm just a little privileged bitch over here speaking on shit, bitching about fucking governments and shit. But if I apply and project my issues with the settler colonial state of quote unquote America onto Australia, then let's bitch from that perspective. And here we go. Um, so when we look at tourism statistics here, um, I think it's international performance. I wasn't able to see much with the statistics. I did try to look through the statistics, and I wasn't able to get down through like 2019 or anything like that. Like, I mean, to 2018. I could get to 2019, but I couldn't get to 2018. And since the ad was for 2018, I'm not going to look too much more into the rest of those results. But that's why we didn't look too much more from Tourism Australia specifically, is because they don't have those numbers published there. But yeah, fucking the Australian Bureau of Statistics, from their Australian System of National Accounts, in their overview of the Australian economy in 2018-2019, they discussed how it expanded, now like they're seeing like this economic growth and shit like that. But is tourism in here? Nope. Okay, I lied. I thought tourism was up in here. So, we're just looking at the disparity in domestic revenue and everything like that. We're seeing some reports, GDP here. Um, their GDP grew about 1 to 2%, 1.9% in 2018, 2019. Okie dokie. Fucking, if from Parliament of Australia, we can look at the extent of inequality and disadvantage in Australia. And from here, we can see, like it's saying that data sources show income inequality has fallen slightly, but wealth is distributed much less equally than income among Australian households. So they're trying to work on a tax and transfer system to redistribute income from higher income households to lower income households. And then it goes into explaining this shit, but I don't have like the mental bandwidth to go through that right now. But that is gonna be linked in the comments of this live stream after it ends. So then from poverty and inequality, we have one on inequality in Australia. So just putting that in mind, um, so the highest 20% of the people with the highest 20% of income, 42% of Australians have the highest 20% of the income, I think, if I'm reading this right. So it's very similar to America, where like 50% of people live below the poverty line here. I think, or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Those graphs aren't very clear in my opinion. They're labeled, or maybe I wasn't able to pay attention because I'm struggling to focus. Okay, so then acoss.org.au has a little PDF on inequality in Australia, but this is 70 pages, so we obviously aren't going to be able to read all of this. Um, but what we are going to do is check out page 40 and page 58 in regards to trends in income inequality and trends in distribution of wealth. So, all right. So it looks like um, average household disposable income grew 4.4% between 2000 and 2008. But that's different now since COVID. Um, they're saying key factors influencing the rise of inequality from 1999 to 2000 and 2007 2008 include strong but unequal growth in earnings and investment incomes, mitigated by lower unemployment. And I think that holds true still. Then they're saying these underlying trends are likely to increase inequality once stronger economic growth is restored. The rising tide may once again lift all boats, but it will lift some more quickly than others. This is not inevitable. Social security, tax, education, and labor market policies all affect the way the fruits of economic growth are distributed across the community. Yep. And then let's take that back to where were we? Um, okay. And then trends in the distribution of wealth. So the average wealth of the highest 20% rose by 53% from 2003 to 2016. While the middle 20% rose by 32%, the lowest 20% declined by 9%. The wealth of the wealthiest 5% grew even more rapidly, by 60% over this 12-year period. The highest 20% increased its share of all wealth by 3.2 percentage points. The shares of all other groups declined, with the greatest reduction in wealth shares experienced by the middle 20%. The main contributors to growth and wealth inequality from 2004 to 2016 were superannuation, whose contribution to the Gini coefficient for wealth rose by 0.04, and investment property, whose contribution rose by 0.02. This reflects relatively strong growth in the overall value of those assets, together with their heavy concentration among wealthier households. And when we think about tourism, investment property, and whether or not that is majority financially controlled by native people or not, I think that's where social issues are coming into play, into how tourism is perpetuating income disparity in Australia, in my opinion. All right, that's a lot to look at, so we're going to move on just because I don't have time for that right now. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics also published on personal income in Australia, and they're talking about how the median personal income was about 51,000 in 2017, 2018, and that employee income was the largest income category, 87% of total personal income. And so that does matter when you reflect on how tourism can be, because of how tourism, because of settler colonialism, utilizing tourism to fund itself. Under settler colonialism, people are forced to work to support tourism in order to make a living. And so that feedback loop contributes into the cycle of income disparity, where it's perpetuated because you have to uphold what's harming you in order to survive. And we see that, I think, when it comes to how Australia relies on tourism to maintain that same profitability from the settler colonialism. From Frontiers, we have a little article here called Lower Income Levels in Australia Are Strongly Associated with Elevated Psychological Distress, Implications for Healthcare and Other Policy Areas. And we're just going to read the background and the conclusions of this. So, the background. Australia is a high-income country with increasing income inequality. It is unclear whether Australia's well-developed mental health care system is making a difference to population mental health, and the federal government has targeted outcomes, accountability, and service funding strategies. In high-income countries, evidence generally suggests that income inequalities increase mental disorders among the poor. This study examined psychological distress rates, a marker of mental health, as varying by income among Australians living within and outside of capital cities. Conclusions. Altering the strong association of lower income levels in Australia with elevated psychological distress would require a multidimensional social policy and healthcare approach. To assess the effectiveness of adopted strategies, population level indicators need to be developed with regular data collection. The poor-rich quintile ratio for very high K10 scores is a potential candidate for a mental health inequality outcomes indicator, since it is easily calculated from data obtained from a regularly conducted national survey, is easily understood, and resonates with a wider audience. Further research on the development of such indicators is also needed. And then, you know what? I'm going to read the results. Among the poorest one-fifth of Australians, 1 in 4 people have psychological distress at a high, very high level. This compares to about 1 in 20 people in the richest of one-fifth of Australians. About 1 in 10 people making up the poorest one-fifth of Australians currently have very high stress, and this reduces to 1 in 50 people in the richest one-fifth. These disparities are consistent both within and outside of capital cities. The national prevalence of elevated distress within income quintiles varies greatly, with poor-rich quintile ratios of typically 4 to 5 for high, very high levels and 7 to 8 for very high levels. These effects operate more powerfully in areas marked by higher scores on the index of relative socioeconomic disadvantage. So, yeah. And let's bring this back here, just one sentence. Poorer communities are more frequently exposed to risk factors for psychological distress and mental disorders such as violence, crime, social conflict, civil unrest, homelessness, and unemployment. So yeah, and when you think about how we use advertising in order to fund that, in the Super Bowl is how that is happening in this way, but advertising in general, like, and how America pushes its capitalism and upholds it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's happening in America is funding settler colonialism through our advertising mechanisms in Australia. So even we're contributing to this. You know what I mean? According to the Reserve Bank of Australia, they have a thing called local income inequality in Australia, and it illustrates it on a map, color coded. Um, I don't see what the colors mean. But, oh, found it. Yeah, it's on the Gini coefficient, from yellow being low through like an orange, pink, purple to like a navy blue almost being the highest. So inequality has changed based on what is happening with their minds, is what I'm getting from this publication. And they're also saying that the tourism industry experienced softer conditions that followed the global financial crisis, reflecting in a high exchange rate. This led to a reduction in income inequality in areas that are tourism centric. So from that, I'm getting that tourism, because of what has happened with their mines and other things with a global financial crisis, tourism is what kept them afloat. Particularly because of the depreciation of the Australian dollar, making it cheaper to go there too. This article questions if there is a link between the degree of inequality in the regional income distribution and household indebtedness. So, household debt, I think. And according to their scatter graph, I think yes. Okay, so then Tourism Australia has an article on their tourism, the economic importance of tourism. And it talks about how tourism in Australia continues to be a driver of growth for the Australian economy, with domestic and international tourism spend totaling 122 billion in 2018 to 2019. That's a lot. I wonder how they're tracking these numbers, though. ResearchGate has a blog on the has a article that from the gender wage gap in the tourism industry. I'm just gonna read the abstract. So the abstract of this article says, this article presents an examination of the gender wage gap among tourism and hospitality employees in Australia. Data from the Household Income and Labour Dynamics in Australia survey, covering the period 2001 to 2014, are used to estimate earnings functions for prime age 25 to 54 male and female workers. Conventional human capital functions are estimated using a random effects regression model. The principal findings suggest that, after controlling for an extensive range of socio-demographic characteristics, female tourism and hospitality employees on average earned 8.5% and 7.5% respectively less than their male counterparts. Although human capital variables like education and work experience play a role in the determination of wages, an employee's gender still continues to be a significant factor in the wage received. So, yeah, I think that is interesting to take note of as well, because we're perpetuating this by finding that they're advertising it, in my opinion. There's a 22 PDF on Tourism Australia, and it talks about the strategic direction, their entity resource, the outcome and plan performance, and their budgeted financial statements, which is what I want to take a look at. So we're going to go over here. Oh, yeah, that's not accurately labeled now, is it? Okay. So, Tourism Australia, the fuck, where'd you go? Is budgeting a net asset position of 20 million in 2018-2019. So their projected budget and their financial income. I love how they're not how they're showing it, like, I guess it's like they're not being very clear, or maybe I didn't read it all to see. But this is not what I thought it was going to be. I'm still gonna, I'm still glad I have this link, because I feel like, it's other people can go through and see what is happening here with the foreign affairs and the budgets. I was thinking or hoping I would get some more information regarding, well, here it is right here. Tourism right here. Okay, well, fuck. Yeah. International tourism visitors, 9.8 million. That's interesting. Okay, I feel like I need to read this whole document to process the context of these tables better, and I did not do that. So I'm not doing a good job of explaining that. But I'm gonna link this in the table, in the comments when the live stream ends, and you'll be able to go check it out and read that shit yourself. But I do think where it shows international tourism visitors and 9.8 million here from a budget is aligns with the 9 million we've been discussing from that differential, with how 27 million was spent on that advertising campaign and 36 million was generated to be the return on investment from that. And so this 9 million right here would align with those numbers. I'm just putting that out there. Okay, and then another fucking thing I didn't read yet was this thing called Income Inequality Experienced by the People of Rural and Remote Australia. It is from the National Rural Health Alliance, and it's a submission to the Senate inquiry into the extent of income inequality in Australia, October 2014. This one was a file I had to download onto my computer. So for this one, if you want to see it, I can only tell you this title and the date for you to Google and download it yourself. Um, this one does not. Let's see if they talk about tourism at all here. Nope. Okay. So let's just read this overview real quick, or just part of that. It's talking about how income inequality is a significant issue for more than 6.7 million people of rural and remote Australia, especially given the pervasive influence of low income on health and well-being. Um, and it's also saying that many goods and services are also more highly priced. And that there is a common perception that housing in rural and remote areas is cheaper than the major cities, but people in rural and regional Australia are just as likely to experience housing stress. And this is because of health, housing, education, and work in rural and remote Australia. So, yeah. And if they're focusing tourism to be their major revenue growth for the whole fucking country, I bet they're not doing much to serve the rural and remote Australians, in my opinion. Us assuming. So, then the Australian government, Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, National Indigenous Australians Agency, has a little blurb on income. Um, and they're saying in 2021, more than 1 in 3, 35%, or 137,600 First Nations adults lived in households with incomes in the lowest 20% of incomes nationally. First income quintile based on all of that. And in between 2011 and 2021, after adjusting for inflation, the median gross weekly equivalized household income increased from 619 to 825 for First Nations adults, but from 998 to 1,141 for non-Indigenous adults. Income disparity. So, in 2018-2019, a government cash pension or allowance was the main source of personal income for 45% of First Nations adults. Better get that money. And maybe tourism is a good thing if they're actually paying. I cannot speak on Australian Indigenous issues. My bitching is a pure projection of my quote unquote American mindset. Um, all that matters is what Australian people, native Indigenous people to Australia think on this issue. That's all that matters. And I can't speak for that. I'm just looking at the statistics reported. Yeah, they also have from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare a blurb on income and finance of First Nations people. And they're saying that it's interesting that there's that, and here they're marketing it as between 2016 and 2021, the First Nations household grew 18% compared to 11% for other households. But we just saw the gravity of that income disparity still. So, I don't like, I feel like that's just like, why are you acting like that is an improvement when there's still a disparity? You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't do a good job there. I don't know. Um, so, yeah, in my opinion. All right, and then the National Indigenous Australians Agency has another blurb on income. And there are 4 key points from here are that in 2021, just over 1 in 3, 35% Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander adults were living in households in the lowest quintile of equivalized gross weekly household income, and 1 in 10 in the highest quintile. In 2021, the uh, median gross equivalized household income for Indigenous adults was $825 per week, and the mean was $1,005. The median personal income for Indigenous Australians 15 and plus was $540 per week in over 2021. Um, and so that's the difference between household and personal income that matters. Oh, you know what? We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to be right back. I apologize. Alright, sorry about that. My roommate was coming to tell me that he was leaving. My very best friend, my human being, my support person. Um, fucking, yeah. So, and, I was fucking saying from the Australian National Indigenous Australians Agency on Income, the last thing that they were saying here was 43% of Indigenous adults had a gross personal weekly income of under 500. 27% earned 500 to 999. 15% earned 1,000 to 1,499, and the remaining 15% earned 1,500 or more. So yeah, that's not enough money for a living. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And when you reflect on how like tourism can perpetuate that income disparity, as we've kind of discussed so far, it's kind of like ethically, how do we feel about what's happening with this value alignment here? You know, and can you consider the return on investment for tourism in Australia if this is paid for by the government? Is it positive if there's still disparity? You know what I mean? Even if you can look at the uplift in tourism and be like, yay, tourism, but when you look at how tourism then impacts income disparity, is that really a good return on investment? I don't know. And that bounces back to what they mean, I think, about how you get short term improvement but not long term. It's kind of like this is like a manifestation of that in a way. And who benefits from that short term? You know, not everybody. And some benefit at the expense of others, in my opinion. Alrighty. So from Parliament of Australia, we see chapter 13 here on Indigenous Australians. And from this regard, we can look at, they have measurements on Indigenous poverty. They're saying that the case of income distribution have been highlighted, and one is the inappropriate use of the nuclear family as an income unit in which income is assumed to be shared. Aboriginal culture places considerable emphasis on the extended rather than the nuclear family, and there are strong cultural obligations to share resources. In addition, the non-material poverty, in terms of disposition from the land and absolute material deprivation suffered by Aboriginal people, suggests a different order of poverty from that experienced by the rest of the population. One study noted that given the depth and multifaceted nature of Aboriginal poverty, it was questionable whether comparative studies of income poverty between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians are relevant. Damn. And they're also saying right here that there are difficulties in defining and measuring Indigenous poverty, and that there is a lack of data, and the available data is often unreliable. In addition, measures of poverty tend to be culturally specific as well as subjective. So the data here is they're grouping that like the Indigenous people experience levels of disadvantage and a associated risk of poverty at much greater rates than the non-Indigenous people. And they're also saying that the fact that Indigenous people experience high poverty rates in cities and regional centers where a full range of services and facilities exist show that Indigenous people do not get the same access to or outcomes from the services as other Australians. And I think we can factor that into where the return on investment is going from the ad spend of the tourism as well. And then the Australian National University, they have a blurb on income, poverty, and inequality. And I figured we could just read the abstract. And it's basically saying that this paper uses data from 2006, 2011, and 2016 censuses to analyze the distribution of income within the Indigenous population and between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous populations. Particular attention is given to geographic variation in Indigenous income, poverty, and inequality. The findings of this paper show a growing divergence between the incomes of Indigenous peoples in urban areas and remote areas. Although Indigenous incomes are growing steadily in urban areas where median disposable equivalized household income rose by 57 per week in real terms between 2011 and 2016, median disposable equivalized household income in very remote areas fell by $12 per week over the same period. Indigenous cash poverty rates in very remote areas rose from 46.9% in 2011 to 53.4% in 2016. During this period, poverty rates in urban areas continued to fall, reaching 24.4% in 2016. Finally, changes in the difference in the incomes of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians followed a similar pattern. Based on the information we've already gotten, that's leading me to really question this. Damn. I kind of want to look into the author-editor and see if their value aligned or not. Okay, but let's see what it says. It says, although there increased incomes in urban and regional areas where the majority of the Indigenous population lives, should we be welcome, this paper highlights a great divergence in the material circumstances of the Indigenous population across Australia. Urgent policy action is required to ameliorate the growing prevalence of poverty among Indigenous people in very remote Australia. Hmm. This was published 2018. Maybe they're trying to, maybe in 2018, they're still riding that high from that extra $9 million in there, but I think COVID probably killed that hope and dream. I don't know. I wonder. But then this is also, those numbers have nothing to do with what happened in 2018 though, because this is from 2016. Yeah. I don't know, but you know what? The source before that did say we were going to be seeing different information. So. So the Australian Institute of Family Studies has a section, an archived section on Aboriginal Australians and poverty. Let's just read this abstract. Income poverty has been the major focus of poverty measurement in Australia. It is widely used among Aboriginal communities, despite the difficulties in using this measurement. The author alerts readers to problems associated with measuring income poverty and argues that definitions used in measuring income amongst white Australians are not always appropriate when measuring income poverty amongst Aborigines. Data accuracy is also a problem. She argues that a much wider focus is needed that incorporates non-material aspects of poverty resulting from racism, oppression, and dispossession. My bad. Yeah. You know what? That kind of explains also some context behind the discrepancies in the numbers that we're seeing. So from the Australian Journal of Labour Economics, we have wages, government payments, and other income of Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. So let's just check out the abstract of this guy. This paper compares the level and source of income for Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians using data from the 2011 wave of the household income and labor dynamics in Australia. 3 sources of income are considered: wages and salaries, government benefits, and income from businesses, investments, and other private transfers. Consistent with many previous studies, Indigenous Australians have, on average, lower total income than non-Indigenous Australians, with this difference being largest for those who are full-time employed. The difference is also larger for males compared to females. In terms of non-wage income, Indigenous men and women receive a much smaller proportion of income from other sources than their non-Indigenous counterparts, primarily businesses and investment income. This is particularly the case for those who are not in the labor force. And correspondingly, government benefits constitute a higher proportion of income for the Indigenous population than for the non-Indigenous. This is true for both males and females, and for all labor force states, although the difference is largest for part-time employed and those who are not in the labor force. Given the Indigenous persons are also more likely to be unemployed than non-Indigenous persons, they are more likely to be dependent solely on government payments as a source of income at any one time. The implications of these findings are discussed, as well as directions for future research. In my opinion, processing it all, I am assuming what's happening is from tourism, only primarily potentially American businesses even. But like, white businesses are profiting off of tourism in Australia while the income disparity greatens. You know what I'm saying? Because of unemployment. And so they weaponize unemployment, I think, as an excuse to then create more tourism. But all that does is create capitalization off of land grabbing, in my opinion. Okay. From the BBC, we have closing the gap. Australia's Indigenous Inequality, not good enough. This is a weird fucking title. It says basically it's made progress, but it's still falling short. Well, I'm short. There's apparently literacy and life expectancy. There's inequality. And of course that impacts income disparity. So there's an annual report from 2018-2019 put out by Tourism Australia, but we don't have time to read all of that because it's 176 pages. So let's find our little table of contents here. Okie dokie. Let's go to page 36 real quick. Damn, so from the United States alone, they got $4 billion in tourism spend apparently, and 811,900. We're just gonna focus on those numbers because this is originally in context of the Super Bowl. You know what? Let's just go through, put America in here, and see what we find. Let's just look at the USA real quick. So we were a target market with a value. They valued us at $6 billion as a target market. So they used the campaigns urging us particularly to explore Australia. And they say thousands of people from the US came. They made arrangements with American Airlines. They had improvements in their tourism, apparently, from their reports and their earnings. Using the There's Nothing Like Australia campaign for this is what that was called. And they also launched this campaign with TripAdvisor, leveraging interest from this in April 2019. They did that after too, so they got even more money. And then in June 2019, they invited people to go visit the set of Dundee. So they're just keeping that campaign rolling. Okay, so this is from a different, I wonder if they had to pay for this one too, because we already showed you with the Cannes Lions International Festival how that one was paid for. If I look into these awards, I wonder if they're all paid for. I did not look into these awards. If I get real bored, I might make that another live stream. So they are admitting right here, even though awareness of Australia as tourism destination is improving among Americans, the conversion rate is still relatively low. And so that was the point of the whole Super Bowl ad. I'm hoping that Discover Aboriginal Experiences Cultural Tour, I'm hoping that is, Native owned and everything like that. Hopefully this is supporting Native people. I just still see numbers with the income disparity that, make me like feel bad. All right. Statista has some information on travel and tourism in Australia, and it fucking talks about how today they're expecting that shit to get to almost 15 billion. That's a lot. It's a lot of money to still have the type of income disparity that they have. I might refresh the captioner real quick. It's being a little fucky to me. Hold on. Hi, my name is Lexi. My bad, did not mean to hit the intro. My bad. Oops. Wrong button. Okay, we're gonna refresh this. Alright. Whenever it gets fucking weird, I just fucking refresh the damn thing. Ugh. Oops. Okay. Because there's still international travel restrictions, I believe, potentially, um, because this is updated for 2024, they're still experiencing a rise in domestic tourism due to the international travel restrictions. So that's interesting. All right. But yeah, fucking national tourism, they have a satellite account thing for the summary of their financial year. Um, and it's from their tourism research. And I just think it kind of tracks because right here it shows pre-pandemic level 2018, 2019, and they're comparing that. So let's look at that real quick. So tourism consumption was 164.5 billion 2022, 2023, which is 72% up on the previous year, and it's 8% higher than pre-pandemic level in 2018, 2019. It's 12.1 billion higher. So that was like 115 billion then. 150 I meant. I think I said 15 when I meant to say 50. Fucking and they're also saying that tourism consumption by the domestic household sector was 27% higher in 2022, 2023 than it was pre-pandemic 2018, 2019. And by the domestic business government sector, it was higher than pre-pandemic. So, good for them. I guess the campaign is working. So here, let's connect this to the GDP we were talking about earlier. We can look at the GDP from tourism. The GDP from tourism is 63 billion in 2022, 2023. Fucking an increase of 77% on 2021, 2022. Which was 27.3 billion. So that's pretty extreme. But it showed me 2018, 2019. The tourism GDP value for 2018, 2019 was 60.3 billion. That's a lot of money. Exports of 2018, 2019 are 39.3 billion. Imports 58.1 billion. Imports had a value of spending by Australian residents during overseas travel. Tourism filled jobs in Australia. 2018, 2019, there were 354.8 thousand full-time jobs. Damn. And that income disparity decreased real hard with COVID. You see that drop then? Hopefully it's going back up now, but I know that income disparity took a hit right there. Look at that. Damn. Because we've already seen how their tourism is such a big part of their economy. Yeah, that's crazy. So this is supposed to just give us an overview of Tourism Australia, the market size, analytics, trends, and forecasts. But apparently you need to pay for this shit, and I didn't realize that because I pulled this up but didn't look at it before. This is a blind reaction, if you will. So fucking I can't see that. I ain't paying for that shit. Fuck that shit. Anyway, I'm still gonna link it though because I pulled it up. So fuck it. I'll still link it if anybody else wants to actually fucking pull this shit up. Feel free to send me what the fuck you find. But yeah. Alright. Then the Australian Institute for Research That Matters put out about Australian inequality. It says inequality on steroids as bottom 90% get just 7% of economic growth since 2009. And this is written in 2023. So that's wild when you consider the cost of living changes since then. Wild to me. Um, and it shows, how Australia is a global outlier in maldistribution of gains from economic growth. If you fall behind the United States, that's bad because the US is fucked. Anyway, um, so we have our proportion of total growth in comparison to the top 10 and 90% by various time frames. Uh, and the top 10% saw 93% of the growth, and the bottom 90% saw only 7% of the growth in Australia between 2009 and 2019. Yeah. They're saying stagnating wages, insecure work, I believe because it's all so tied to tourism. Soaring profits and an unfair tax system mean many people are going backwards. And it's all connected to the settler colonialism, you know what I mean? Um, So yeah, now they have a post from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade called "Reimagining Australia's Visitor Economy," and I am reimagining a focus on native-led initiatives where you transfer ownership. If there's like certain people who have like capped out of in the billions of profit in Australia, they need to transfer part of that ownership to the Indigenous peoples there. Um, and allow them to profit. You know what I'm saying? That's me reimagining Australia's visitor economy, but let's see how they do that. Oh god, I don't want to read all this. Okay, let's just read these three priority actions. They want to do modernization, diversification, collaboration. They don't give a fuck. They're just fucking marketing themselves. They're like, yeah, let's have AI write this shit. Um, just kidding. Fucking they have a multi-phase approach to recovering from the pandemic, apparently. I don't know. It looks like they're just trying to double down on tourism, maybe? Assuming here. So, Human Rights Government from the Australian Human Rights Commission, has one on human rights, has a blurb on human rights and Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples. Um, And then here they're talking about recognition and protection of traditional lands, territories, and resources, as well as enjoyment of culture and use and preservation of the language and everything like that, not to be subject to the forced assimilation or destruction of culture, and to be treated equally under the law. Is income disparity being treated equally under the law? I don't know, you tell me. What about, the all that So yeah, and I was talking about how on a daily basis, the Indigenous people live with the consequences of Australia's failure to protect their basic human rights and continue to experience racial discrimination in many spheres of life. Mm. So yeah, they're facing issues with mass incarceration as well. A lot of the same problems that are happening in the U.S. are also happening there to them. So the Australia State of the Environment has um, a publication on the impacts of colonialization, frontier violence, dispossession, and family disruption. And it talks about how the colonization of Australia changed and continues to limit Indigenous peoples' ability to live on, govern, and manage their country, with policies of violence and forcible removal into reserves and attempts to prohibit use of languages and cultural practices. And I can totally see that because from the reports, what we see is the only way in which Indigenous people are written in a way that is supportive by the colonizers is if they are um, supporting tourism or if they're, cooperating with tourism. From what I see, to me. And then this goes on to actual massacres and killings regarding Aboriginal Native people of Australia. Um, in the United States, we don't use the word Aboriginal, so it's odd for me to be calling them Aboriginal. I don't know if that's the right word for me to use for people in Australia. I apologize, y'all, if I'm not using the right words. Here we typically use Native or Indigenous. Um, So yeah, they called it the stolen generations where families were separated and children removed from their parents resulted in enormous and ongoing cross generational trauma. In the Americas over here, they call that like the 60 scoop, or that's one of the ways that they did it, and then different ways. But yeah, this is how they lost access to the country and everything between trauma and connection to their country and displacement of their family and disconnection. So yeah, and it's interesting here where they say a common theme from the community consultation undertaken for this report was the perception of an overall disregard of traditional knowledges by government. And who is funding the tourism? Government. You know what I mean? So yeah, this is a pretty good, it's going on to lack of access to water rights, lack of access to country. It's talking about inflexibility of management approaches. It's talking about lack of protection for indigenous knowledge. This is a very awesome source. It's going into legislation as well regarding native issues in Australia. Yeah, I think everybody should check that shit out. So the Nature Conservatory Oh no, the Nature Conservancy of Australia has a little blurb on how humans have impacted Australia's nature over time. And it's a brief history of the impacts of Indigenous and non Indigenous Australians on nature. Oh, damn. So 30 million years ago, Australian continent separated from Antarctica. Its last connection to the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. So because it evolved in its own unique nature from there on, it resulted in a diverse range of incredibly beautifully and often bizarre plants and animals. So there's been a recognized arrival date of humans in Australia to at least 65,000 years ago. Um, this statement right here about when humans arrived in Americas, that could be considered indigenous erasure and in conflict with what is taught within native communities and what has also been proven over time. So we're going to ignore that. Over the last 65 million plus millennia, the coming and going of the last ice age had a significant impact on the evolution of life in Australia. Hmm. Then the environment they lived in heavily influenced Indigenous people's way of life. And their Indigenous people have a deep connection with the country, the land, the sea, the sky, the river, the seasons, the plants, and animals that surround them. Australia has a harsh environment. And it does have low productivity of the land because of low fertility. So many Native people had a hunter-gatherer lifestyle to work with this. They also used fires to flush out animals for hunting, cleared away to make it easier to move from place to place, and ensure resources were abundant, convenient, and predictable. And this also meant, they could control the post-burn recovery. And that wildfires caused by lightning strikes weren't as destructive or extensive. Because a wildlife with less grass and will to fuel it is less destructive. And some Australian actually depend on fire for their survival. And then came white people. Before white people, there was over 700,000 people, or up to, I think they're probably over, and that lived there with up to 600 different tribes or clan groups. And despite that, they claimed it no one's land, terra nullius. And from there on, they began taking away land from its traditional owners and their subsequent displacement from country and culture. And we're here now. Right now, we're funding tourism through the Super Bowl. And that Europeans brought them diseases that they couldn't resist. They never experienced those before. And because of the persecution, being murdered, genocide, um, Native people suffered terribly. And now they're up there fucking the environment up and bringing non-native species that are producing damage to their native animals and wildlife and way of being. And yeah, their hope for the future is Aboriginal land rights and recognition. Yes, love that. But wait a minute, land rights, land rights. Right. We see the recognition. Let's get some land rights. Okie dokie. Um, and then here we've got the abstract from Science Direct, and you can get the full publication from lifeagain.org. We have the impossibilities of doing tourism otherwise, the case of settler colonial Australia, and the closure of the Climb at Uluru. I got hair on my tongue. Eh. Oh, got it. Okay. Abstract. This article analyzes the recent closure of the Uluru. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Is it Uluru? Uluru? Uluru. Uluru. Of the Uluru. I'm so sorry if that said wrong. Climb in the settler colonial context of Australia and reflects on impossibilities for doing tourism, possibilities or impossibilities for doing tourism otherwise to practices and logics of coloniality. Tourism at Uluru is embedded within settler colonial mapmaking, privileging supply-side models of consumption at the expense of the Anangu traditional custodians. We contribute to the emerging body of research in tourism that argues for a dismantling of colonial logics in practice and theory, and discuss the possibilities inherent in forms of tourism led by the Aboriginal custodians. In this context, tourism can promote deeper engagement to place that is more than human, beyond the Eurocentric dualisms of nature and culture, human, non-human, spirit. Unlearning coloniality is key for promoting transformative tourism. But to me, unless you actually have the land rights and the autonomy back to native people to back this up, it's all bullshit. Because otherwise you're tokenizing native culture to perpetuate your settler colonial state. You know what the fuck I mean? Um, but that's not to blame any native person who is trying to survive under settler colonialism. Y'all are chill as shit. I'm talking about the settler colonialism. Um, let's look at how long this is. I don't think I can read it all, but let's do the intro and the conclusion. Okay. Oh, I don't know if I can do all this intro. I lied. I'm not doing that. That's too long. I ain't reading shit. Okie dokie. Now we're just gonna read an article by Daniel Black um called Settler Colonial Continuity and the Ongoing Suffering of Indigenous Australians from International Relations. Alright. Do I do I really want to read all of this? Okay, okay. I'm not gonna read the whole. I don't know if I'm gonna read the whole thing, but let's skim through this. Let's start. We might read the whole thing. I don't know. So this is the last thing we're gonna look over. This says central to the discourse of contemporary Indigenous affairs is the notion that settler colonialism is an unfortunate historical event that has since ceased. Such assumptions fail to recognize the enduring settler colonial structures that continue to shape the oppression of modern Indigenous Australians. It is precisely this notion that this essay seeks to deconstruct. The present essay will argue that the experience of Indigenous Australians has been shaped throughout history and continues to be shaped in the present by what will be referred to as the settler colonial logic of elimination. In making this argument, the basic precepts of settler colonial theory will first be sketched, in which it will be contended that the concept of settler colonialism is best viewed as a continuous structure aimed at expropriating and maintaining control over land, rather than as a concluded genocidal event that exists only in the history books. Tracing Australian settler colonialism in chronological stages, the argument will then follow that by denying sovereignty to the uncivilized native in the pre-colonial stages, the civilized settler eliminates the native first in a notional sense within international law discourse, thus justifying the subsequent colonial advancement into the discovered territory. This notional elimination manifested in a particularly potent form in Australia by designating the entire continent as uninhabited land. British colonial authorities essentially eliminated Indigenous Australians under international law as if they had never existed in the first place, thus bypassing the legal requirement of treaty making. It shall then be argued that the frontier era, characterized by overt violence and forced spatial segregation, can be best understood as the first stage of actual elimination aimed at clearing the native from his land. It will then be submitted that assimilationism continued this structural process of elimination by removing the growing population of half-caste children from their tribes and recategorizing them within white settler society. It's interesting because it's like they took the shit that worked for them from colonizing the United States and put that over there too, because they were like violating treaties with native people in the US. So in Australia, they're like, let's not even try to bother with the treaty. Let's just ignore them dead fucks. Native people aren't dead fucks. I'm sorry I said that. Um, but fucking, and the way that they remove children from tribes and recategorizing within white settler society, that happened in the Americas too, man. Like, it's just weird how they do colonialism the same in places. Okay, let's read this conclusion. I don't have the mental capacity to read the whole thing right now, but it will be linked in the comments at the end of the video. So, to conclude, it has been strongly contended here that the past and present suffering of Indigenous Australians is attributable to a singular eliminatory logic inherent to settler colonialism. As the economic use to which colonial Australia could be put required settler permanence, the central purpose of this logic throughout the course of Australian history has been to eliminate Indigenous Australians as a sovereign identity and expropriate their land. Viewing settler colonialism as an ongoing structure brings the notional elimination of Indigenous Australians and international law sharply into focus as the chronological starting point of present Indigenous suffering, from which a sense of clearly identifiable stages of elimination throughout Australia's history progressed. It has been the aim of this paper to expose settler colonialism as an ongoing structural process for two central reasons. Firstly, acknowledging settler colonialism's enduring logic substantially enhances the extent to which the inequality, persecution, and erosion of identity faced by contemporary Indigenous Australians can be fully understood. Secondly, acknowledging settler colonialism as an ongoing process permits a framework aimed at addressing inequality and the erosion of Indigenous identity to be defined in terms of a parallel and ongoing movement of organized resistance that features Indigenous perspectives, beliefs, and practices. Mic drop. Man, that dude is probably the shit. And the United States, we would capitalize the I for Indigenous and the N for Native, when referring to the people and the culture. Um, and it's more about acknowledging the identity as a proper culture is why so I know some people might get offended when they say that it's not capitalized. I've had that conversation before, with like it was like where like I actually usually do capitalize it, but it was a typo in my captions where I didn't capitalize one, and someone was like, it's not capitalized, and I was like, oh, my bad. um but yeah, fucking, so that, but I didn't read the entire document, but I do think from the introduction and the conclusion, I liked our point about how we consider the genocide as one event that was a static event that occurred in the past, but the genocide is ongoing and we're perpetuating it still through settler colonialism. And I kind of really like this ideology and this point, and I think that's a great way to wrap up everything we've been discussing. Um, and so, just to recap today, with everything we have, basically we did started off with just a little palate cleanser, with me possibly ruining or adding some additional commentary to the Missing Missy um, blog post that is supposed to be a joke, I think. And fucking, well, I mean, it's a joke. Fucking, but just like saying I can't speak for others. But then after that, fucking, we reviewed Super Bowl advertising in general, just general ad costs and um, what the word on the street, so to speak, is on return on investment for Super Bowl ad placements and if it's even worth it. Then after that, we did a deeper dive on the Crocodile Dundee um, ad that wasn't an ad, but it that wasn't an actual movie trailer, but it was an actual ad for Australian tourism. And then after that, we looked and this was aired in the Super Bowl, which is how it's connected there. And then after that, we fucking looked into what could the possible return on investment be from that regarding what are the reports on tourism in Australia, as well as what did the actual company, which was Tourism Australia, report as well regarding their case, as well as what was the word on the street regarding PR about the campaign. And then from there, we looked at where is this money going, who benefits. So from that, we see how tourism is our primary driver of economics in Australia. We look at the income disparity in Australia, and then we see how the disparity is primarily impacts native people. Then we look at how tourism can be considered a driving force of a settler colonial state by profiting off of stolen land. Um, and yeah, we're here now. I feel like that's a pretty good recap of everything we discussed today. So, numbers wise, the total amount spent on that campaign, if I understood and I'm processing this information correctly, I believe they spent 27 million and that they were able to trace 36 million return on a 36 million um, profit or tourism spend from that ad, and I think that was a 9 million return on investment, um, or return on ad spend from that ad. If we're making sense here, yeah, fucking all right. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you. This was a bit rambly, but I feel like it's all connected, and in a way, it all makes sense to me. I did this had, in a lot of ways, this had nothing to do with this, but in some ways it did. There's, I'm gonna link a fucking I did this other episode on Zionism and how the United States was colonized under this ideology of Zionism through the Mormon Church. Um, and I'm gonna link that there too if you want to compare and contrast different ideologies and strategies that occurred within the colonial assimilation and land grab of parts of the United States versus Australia. So yeah, thank you for your time today. I appreciate you. Fucking life's a bitch and then you die. And yeah, have a great night. Thanks for watching. You might want to adjust the volume after all of this because a loud music is going to play. So yeah, adjust the volume. And then if you're coming to these lives anyway, I do have a loyalty program, nolo.child.com/loyalty. If you sign up for my site as a member and you follow the check-in procedure, you can get points just for showing up to these lives anyway. So I just want to let you know about that. Yeah, about that. Yeah, I always have a really hard time saying goodbye because, you know, saying goodbye really just kind of feels like you're Tom Hanks. You know what I mean? Over here, just like, well done, Wilson. But anywho, yeah, so thank you for being here and goodbye.